In 1999, Morpheus offered Neo a choice between a red pill and a blue pill. In 2018, this country fractured between red and blue. In 2022, I'm here to tell you that if you really want the truth, more voters are neither red or blue. Yet, they have no representation, no choice, and no options. They have to choose between candidates chosen by the red people or the blue people. I'm David Esrati, and I'm running for Congress as an American, as in red, white, and blue. I'm a veteran, an activist, and a small businessman. I'm asking you to join me in reminding the professional politicians in Congress who their bosses are. I support ranked choice voting, campaign finance reform, and a verified voter information system, all so we can stop having the best politicians money can buy. It's time to elect a veteran who will work for you, no matter what color they want to label you. Please go to electesrati.com and learn more. I'm David Esrati, and I approve this message. Jurassic Park, you thought those little baby dinosaurs were cute until they turned into out-of-control carnivores. That's sort of what happens to government when we elect people based on very expensive advertising campaigns and propaganda. I'm David Esrati. I'm a veteran and a small businessman running for Congress. You don't want professional ad people and pollsters to sway your vote. All those hot-button issues like gun control, abortion, borders are all politicized to stop you from voting rationally. And thinking rationally seems to be in short supply these days. Most Americans have been voting against their own best self-interest for a long time because we've allowed money to buy our leaders. 1 million Americans died in the last 2 years because our leaders couldn't lead. It wasn't that hard. Mask, distance, test, and then vaccinate. In an instant, we had billions to spend on healthcare for COVID, when for years we've been told we can't provide healthcare for everyone equally in this country. That's an unintended consequence of the pandemic. If you think about it, our government can pretty much do whatever it wants, or what the people who buy our politicians tell our leaders to do. We also had a ton of money to prop up businesses. The next thing you know, it turns out that a living wage was not only possible, but necessary. As a small businessman who won't sell you out to corporate interests and lobbyists, I can tell you that it's time to fully understand the consequences of companies like Amazon, Facebook, and Google and their effect on small business, and to remind you that small business is the #1 creator of jobs in this country. So this next election, don't trust this ad or any other political ad. Do your homework and think before you vote. It's time to put this ad man in Congress because I know that the best advertising is based on the truth, not the size of the budget or payola. Or you can just vote based on who has the money to buy their way into Congress and live with the consequences. I'm David Esrati, and I approve this message. Hi, I'm David Esrati. I'm running for Congress in OH-10, which is all of Montgomery County, all of Greene County, and parts of Clark County. District is still unconstitutional, but hey, that's been the way it's been as long as Mike Turner's been in office. Set up so he can win. So, today's subject is something that some of you may know something about, some of you may never have heard a thing about and have no clue. And if you have experience with it, you are probably as frustrated as me and all the other small businesses. So, a little background. First off, I am a small business. I happen to be a service-disabled veteran-owned business that has been certified as one by the VA. They have a verification system looking, you have a disability rating, and if you own the business and blah, 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 and you get to have that rating. There are several different subsets of minority business contracting. And the federal government puts programs in place to make sure that a certain percentage of government contracts will go to these disadvantaged businesses or minority businesses so that we can have some sort of equity and diversity, equity, and inclusion thing going or whatever. And it's been in effect for quite a while. Now, there are several different types for several different reasons. And there's the government contracting process itself, which is absolutely bonkers. I've never seen anything so complex and convoluted and bizarre in my life. And the idea of having purchasing officers running these things instead of content matter experts often ends up being sort of a disaster. So, a lot of this stuff is done out at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. They're a big logistics hub. They buy a lot of things, and you would think that minority businesses, service-disabled veteran-owned businesses like mine, would be welcome there and would find it easy to interact and sell something to the base. Oh, no, that's not the way it works. But we're going to get into that. So, back around 2004, the SBA had a program called FastTrak that they bought from the company. A foundation had created this program for small business entrepreneurship. They had made their fortune, I believe, in those little stupid slippers they give you at the hospital. But that's another story. I found myself in a class with about a dozen other small businesses owned by veterans. And the professor who taught this happened to be one of my former professors at Wright State, who, when I was at Wright State, I had no clue. He was a former paratrooper just like me and two my other classmates. In that little group, we sat there week in, week out, and we worked through a workbook and we learned things about financial statements and business plans and marketing strategies and how to do business with the government. And, at the end, we would put together a whole plan and get graded. And then the deal was we had paid $300 to be in this, but we would get a $600 gift certificate from the Gateway store. Well, who wouldn't do that, right? So we were in there and we did this thing together and we all grew close together and realized that none of us had a clue how to make it through all this. And that maybe if we got together on our own, we could work together and put together some attempts to grow our government contracting opportunities. We now had a contact at the SBA sort of, and we had this intro from some companies that had success doing business with the government. We started a group. It was me and originally two other paratroopers, both Army Rangers from Vietnam era. A guy named Bill Brownsberger, who owned a machine shop, and Bob Liebeck, who owned a mail house. And we'd get together first, we'd have lunch and meet at the old pizza factory in the site of the South Park Tavern. We'd have pizza, it'd be $5 a head, and we'd sit and talk, and we'd get guest speakers to come in, and this thing sort of grew. And one of the other companies that was there was one owned by Earl Gregorich and his partner, who I can't, for some reason I'm drawing a blank right now, but Earl joined up with us soon after, and we started working our way through what it takes to do business with the government. And we also found out over time there was a whole bunch of other organizations trying to do the same thing, some much further along, like NVOBA or the Elite Business Network of Veterans out in California. And we thought we were, doing this for the first time on our own. We became a 501c3 and then a C6, I believe. And we would have monthly meetings and training and all kinds of things. And we grew so that we were having between 30 and 50 business owners coming together. Great and fine and dandy. Everything was, moving sort of along in the right direction. But none of us were getting contracts. And the thing standing in the way was something the government had done, and they had handed this whole thing over to the General Services Administration, the GSA, who were originally tasked with maintaining all the government buildings and purchasing supplies to maintain those buildings. So the federal buildings, courts buildings, federal prisons, all these buildings, national libraries. It boggles the mind, but the GSA was in charge of all this. And they also bought the toilet paper, for the National Park Service and all these other things. And to do business with the GSA, you needed a thing called a GSA schedule. And there was a whole bunch of companies that would help you get a GSA schedule if you paid them about $3,000. It seems kind of crazy to have to pay $3,000 to put an application in. And then you'd have to wait 6 months, and then it might get approved, and this is supposedly your contract with the government to do business with them. Now, that works great if you are selling commodities, like how much is a roll of toilet paper sort of thing. But for a professional services firm like mine, or a custom contracting firm like my other two veteran paratroopers, it got a little confusing on how to put all this through. Bob managed to get a GSA schedule, and then he didn't manage to meet the bare minimum of having $50,000 in contracts over the first couple of years, and then they revoke it. Like, too bad. You didn't get enough contracts, you're done. But what we also learned is there are other minority business contracts set-asides. 8A, which was originally set up to help American Indians and Native Americans and Alaskan natives and sort of things. But somehow along the line also included Indians from India and Pacific Islanders from, Indonesia. And this 8A companies would get this program and basically get carte blanche on contracts. Like, contracting officers could award it to an 8A without even thinking twice. They didn't have to compete. They didn't have to anything. Oh, we'll just give it to you. And there's some firms in Dayton that grew very big with 8A certification. One was Mike Turner's benefactor, Raj Soin, with his Modern Technologies Corporation. Another is Michael Bridges of Peerless Technologies, who claims to be a Pacific Islander. And Michael has made a lot of money and got a lot of government contracts, and he gave a lot of money to Mike Turner. In fact, he gave so much he had to return it. Turner had to return it to Bridges a couple times because he went over the limits. So for some reason, they come first. The next level down is 3%. That's a 5% boost. Next is 3% is HUBzones and service disabled veteran-owned business. In fact, all government contracts over a certain size, they're supposed to subcontract out at least 3% to service disabled veteran-owned businesses. It doesn't happen because my business is not only a service disabled veteran-owned business, but also a HUBzone business. Now, you don't know what a HUBzone is because I haven't talked about it yet. HUBzones are done by the SBA, and it is historically underutilized business zones. These are areas where, business traditionally hasn't been, and it's been poverty-stricken and everything else. HUBzones have some funky requirements. Number one, the company offices have to be in the HUBzone. Number two, the owner needs to live in the HUBzone. Number three, 35% of the employees have to live in the HUBzone. For a small business, this isn't too hard. For a bigger business, it can cause some problems. And what happens when an employee quits or moves out or, whatever, all of a sudden you lose your status? This is like the most insane thing I've ever heard. But it exists. But I have these two certifications, and I thought, oh, yeah, somebody's going to come and find me. No. I have to go and fill out application after application and bid after bid and put things in, and then still doesn't happen. So what I was told to do was market my company to large prime contractors with big contracts. And they would welcome us with open arms and say, thank you for allowing us to spend 3% of our multi-million to billion-dollar contracts with you. That didn't work either. First one I went after was the Air Force recruiting contract, because we're right next to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And I figured it'd be handy for them to hire us because the agency that had it is in Austin, Texas. An agency called GSD&M, where a certain friend of mine used to work. And so I got in there to go and make a presentation. Flew to Austin, went and talked to them, and turns out that they hire a diversity person on contract from Detroit who flies in for a week every month or whatever and sits through this thing. And so did some other very bored people. And nothing came at all. So we tried another contract. We've tried the Army contract several times. I was in the Army. I should know something. Army Recruiting Command. They literally just went out to bid 2 years ago. It was an $8 billion contract over 10 years. We thought we had some pretty good ideas we could sell to them. Nope, they didn't even want to talk to us. They went ahead and did it. All on their own, got the contract. It was between them and McCann, the former ad agency in New York that had the contract. But somebody at McCann got caught sleeping with somebody on the client side, Army side, military side, and they got kicked out. So it went to DDB, Doyle Dane Bernbach. Old school agency. You've seen their work for Kroger. And they had a really solid pitch deck to go to the Army. They got the contract, and none of that work ever got produced. I saw the pitch deck. I thought it was pretty solid reasoning, well thought out, made sense, but nope. Instead, they kept doing this shoot 'em up thing that looks like something selling video gaming to high schoolers. And that really didn't fit with the data they gathered from their research. And the Army hasn't been hitting their recruiting goals with this campaign. Wonder why? Also the fact that less than 25% of our population is even fit enough or smart enough to be in the Army, which is a sad state of affairs. So I had some ideas and I couldn't get through to DDB, so they have an open pitch week at the Army Recruiting Command headquarters at Fort Knox. So I drove on down there and I had a whole presentation. We had to tell them in advance what we were going to do. We went down, made the pitch. Halfway through the pitch, they say, oh, sorry, we're the wrong people. You're really supposed to talk to this other guy. I'm like, what? I did all this. I drove down here and nothing? At least let me finish this. At least let me go and say, tell you the rest of it and see what happens. Well, nope. We finished, but not the right person. The right person, he was too busy to see us. So we sent it in. He said, oh, you have to comply with the FAR. That's the Federal Acquisitions Regulations. So I did some things there, and I still sent it, and they threw it back right away. Said, no, we've done this before. We're not interested. I tried going back to DDB. Little did I know, DDB had hired a company in New York to meet their minority business contracting goals. That company's called Hero, run by a guy named Joe Anthony. He's currently suing DDB and the Army for $150 million at least, and it's dragging through the courts because he was misled. He was told he was an integral part of the team. He made the pitch. His ideas were valued in this, and he never saw a dime out of this contract. This is how things work in this huge omnibus type contracting thing. The VA moved to a system called where they had Vector, where they'd have a whole big group of people bid to take a whole bunch of projects together. This is absolutely the worst thing to do for small businesses. I was in with a group headed by company in Dayton that's managed to crack the code and do quite a bit of work for the government and the VA. JJR Solutions. Dave Judson's a really super nice guy. He's managed to get some contracts, but we didn't get the part that I was involved in, which was the marketing component. So he's just doing data flipping and pivoting and working in that area because we didn't get awarded the other part. But I did go and research the part, who they gave it to, and what I found was one of the companies that got it was, as part of the winning bid, had been disbarred from doing work for the government and had been engaged in fraud. Great, wonderful. I left out a couple other types of minority set-asides. There's women-owned, which doesn't have the same sway as it used to. But the major problem isn't any of these set-aside ideas or anything else. The major problem is the GSA should not be running contracts for everything. And they need to make an easier GSA schedule easy, so small businesses. And when I say small, I don't mean the SBA version of small. I'm talking like 5 million and under. Not 500 employees, 5 million gross, under 50 employees. Something to get you started, because they always ask, what's your past performance? Which is a catch-22. You can't get work if you don't have past performance. And you don't have past performance unless you've gotten work. We actually did get one contract in 2018. And it was the most fulfilling project I ever did. It was a series of videos to help the Cincinnati VA overcome some bad press and to get people veterans to understand that the VA is the first place to go for medical care. And we did a series of 8 videos. And I thought, great, I've got past performance. Until found out that past performance only counts if the contract's over $250,000. So no more contracts, no more videos, no more work. In fact, many of the videos never even made it to where the public can see them. I've got a few of them right on the front page of my website, thenextwave.biz. I'm very proud of the work. And they were happy with it, but no more contracts. If you saw the typical government contract and the response, I did one once for West Point. It was 150 pages. It took 2 weeks to fill it out. And I'd asked right before I started, is this going to involve visits to campus? Is it required? Because if it is, my travel costs are going to be prohibitive. Oh no, you like one visit a year. So I figured in one visit a year into my quote, and I lost the contract to the incumbent who's right there and local. And the reason? Too many visits. We need you more there. Again, how much time do they expect small businesses to invest on a contract that was worth less than $100,000 if they're going to screw you by telling you, we're not going to give local preference, and they give local preference? I couldn't help it. I have to charge what the per diem rate is, mileage and per diem, according to the federal government. If you have to make a trip there, it costs this many dollars per mile. It costs this much for a day for a hotel, etc. And you have to work all that into the quote. That had nothing to do with the quality of work. And we had, at that time, a guy on staff who had done work for the Coast Guard Academy. And we had samples. Oh no, this isn't good enough. You have to send us printed copy samples. We're being asked to design it. We're not even going to print it. And they wanted printed copies, was one of the reasons we lost the bid. This kind of stupidity is what causes people to have a bad taste about government contracting and doing business with the government. We can fix a lot of this. There has to be an easier way. And more importantly, what is the real goal here? Is it to get the best possible work at the lowest price? Or is it to get the government dollars into these minority businesses and grow them and give them a chance? You have to make up your mind, because the idea that big business is going to automatically sponsor small business hasn't been working very well. Because if it had, I am pretty sure we would have, with all these years of being in the SAM, the System for Advanced, SAM.gov, Systems for Advanced, for Acquisition Management, someone would have found us. It doesn't happen. We've done some work for the VA before where we did design for a conference, and then it just dried up. At one time we bought pens for a conference, and then it dried up. These things are the things that were the lifeblood of small business, but they are not being made easily accessible because of the conflicts, how screwed up this contracting process is. So, when I get to Congress, the first thing I want to talk about is a GSA EZ, a simple form to get you filled out so that they know who you are, what you are. I don't need to know if you own foreign flag vessels or have spacecraft. That is actually in the questions for a GSA schedule. I don't need to know that if you have less than 100 employees. I need to see who you've worked for, what kind of work you've done, what kind of performance you've had from your current clients. Do you have the capacity to do the job, and do you do it well? That's a good start. The second thing is to make sure that there's a way to teach these government procurement officers that there is more to buying professional services than price. We are not all priced the same because some of us have more experience and are better at it. And you pay one way or the other. Either you pay to redo it or you pay to get it right. Please, let's start being sensible about how we work with the people that are already, I mean, these are taxpayers. They're paying for these services. Let's give it back to companies in a way that it works so that a lot more people can get a chance to be helped by doing work for all of us. That's what we need to have. So I'm going to wrap this up, but I want to remind you tomorrow morning from 9:30 until 1:30 at my house, 113 Bonner Street, pancake breakfast, buttermilk pancakes made from scratch. We've got two kinds of pure maple syrup. We've got light and dark. We have Plugra unsalted butter, which is cultured, not churned. We have orange juice. We have Ghost Light coffee. And remember, there is no pork at my pancake breakfast. No sausage, no bacon. Sorry, pork is what Mike Turner specializes in. I want to make our government lean. Anyway.
Facebook comment?
I got a Facebook comment and I can't read it. What is it?
Casey Prophet, when you're elected to office, I'll come and clean the windows there.
Hey Casey, thank you so much. I could probably hire you right now to come clean the windows because I don't have time to do it. Things have been crazy. Casey owns a small window cleaning company and it's been around for a long time. He used to work at Custom Frame Services, who will frame a poster that somebody who comes to Pancake Breakfast will win for attending. We're going to have a random drawing of the people who come there. You get a signed Shepherd Ferry print, and you can go over to Custom Frame Services and get it framed. How about that? We'll also have t-shirts and hats for sale, and they'll be the best pancakes you have all day, and I look forward to seeing you there. If you are wondering where to go and you didn't write it down, if you go to electasrati.com/events, there's an invite for the event and it will have all the information you need. Hope to see you there. Other than that, we debuted our new commercial yesterday, Monopoly. I hope you show it and share it, talking about how it doesn't work when a few people have all the money and all the property, the game stops. That message needs to be spread. I need you to think about talking to your friends and family and neighbors about voting. Make sure they're going to, because the choice really is Democrats or fascists. Really. I mean, we've seen what the Republicans are up to. the divisiveness in this country, the raiding of our capital, the defense of a crazed president who has thought he had unlimited power and could stay in office forever, who wants to ban abortion, make guns everywhere, and refuses to deal with immigration problems, but likes to point to them for the flaws of everything. And enough of this part about the Biden economy. The Fed's going to bankrupt us all and the rest of the world with their insane rate hikes. We need to get somebody in there that will say, enough's enough. We've got to enforce antitrust. We can't allow the billionaires to set the prices for everything, including the cost of entry to Congress. Mike Turner has 27 billionaires backing him from out of state. 90% of his money came from out of state. I don't even know a billionaire, and I've gotten 2 donations, 2 people max out the donations. That's it. He's had 100 of them. That's insane, including Michael Bridges. We'll be back next Monday, live. Happy to talk to you, answer your questions. Thank you for watching, and have a great weekend. Remember, pancakes tomorrow. Thank you.